that's just so crazy. So they are fighting for their lives. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it all plays out. Because I mean, the Steelers they did everything well against the Patriots, but then again, that's like it's playing the Patriots is like playing a video game on like the hardest level, and you just can't beat it. And then eventually everything goes right, and you win.
By Foco.com. The holiday season is here, and Foco has all kinds of unique Pittsburgh Pirates, Steelers, and Penguins items. They're the perfect gift for all sports fans. Order today at Foco.com for guaranteed shipping before Christmas. Be the MVP of gift giving this holiday season. And for a limited time, if you buy one bobblehead, you get the second one 25% off. That's www.foco.com, Foco.com. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Donut Bag, part of the Pulse Podcast Network and the Pod Hub Network. In this episode, I preview the Steelers-Saints game with Bob Rose from Canal Street Chronicles, as well as host of the Bayou Blitz podcast, and Johnnie Black from the Scorecrow. The Donut Bag starts right now. Steelers and Saints in a huge matchup for both teams. With me to talk about it is Bob Rose. He is at BobbyR2613 on Twitter. He covers the Saints for the Canal Street Chronicles and is host of the Bayou Blitz podcast. Bob, how you doing?
I'm really good. Thank you so much for having me, and Merry Christmas to yourself and all of your listeners.
Well, thank you. Thank you. You too. So I was really hoping that by the time we got to the Saints in Week 16, that the Saints would have nothing to play for, that they would rest their starters, and that's not the case. Even though they have the best record in the league, they still need to keep winning, right?
Yeah, they do. The way the NFC standings work out now, the Saints have already wrapped up the NFC South, and I'm almost positive they've clinched a first-round bye. But they need to either win one of their last two or have the Rams lose once to clinch home field advantage throughout the NFC playoffs. So they're right on the cusp, but they need to close the door on this opportunity.
Yeah. Why have they done so well this year? It seems like they're doing great at just about everything.
Pretty close to it. And if you were to put one word on why they've had so much success, not only this season, but even dating back to last season, if you just put one word on it, the word would be balance. Everybody knows about Drew Brees and his Hall of Fame credentials and the fact that he's still playing at a pretty high level. But Coach Sean Payton and the Saints offenses have had Brees for years, but had coming off of a string just a couple years ago of 3 straight losing seasons. And Brees was throwing for well over 5,000 yards and well over 30 touchdowns and putting up record-setting offensive numbers. But they struggled mightily on the defensive side of the ball. And last year, leading into 2017, they hit the jackpot on their draft. You look down their roster, and I mean, outside of Brees, Cam Jordan, and Mark Ingram, all of whom are established veterans, there are so many players on that roster that are only in their second or third NFL seasons. So I mean, they've not really even hit their physical prime yet. One wouldn't think, and they've come into the last 2 years with a different kind of mentality. They've been nicknamed as the NFL bullies throughout some of the NFL networks, and that's mainly because they built powerful offensive and defensive lines, and they're winning in the trenches. And you know yourself, if you win in the trenches, you can just about dictate what the pace of the game is going to be. I think that they can still beat a team with Breeze and that passing game if they absolutely had to, but they no longer have to win games via shootout. They can win it at a defensive slugfest if they had to as well.
Yeah, it's amazing what they have with Kamara and Ingram. Just such a luxury, and I think the Steelers were maybe hoping to get that with Le'Veon Bell and James Conner, but how I don't understand. Like, one thing that people were saying that if they did play together is like, well, they couldn't play together. It's either one or the other. But what seems to work with Kamara and Ingram, how do they do it?
Well, first of all, the two running backs have a terrific relationship. And just that whole Saints franchise, that whole Saints team, just has a very close-knit relationship. We've talked to a number of players that are either former players that are close to the team or associated with the current players, and these guys genuinely like each other and support each other, and that comes out on the field as well. And Mark Ingram has always kind of gotten a bad rap from Saints fans. He's not this or he's not that. But one thing that Mark is a true competitor, and he will do whatever it takes to win the football game. He's the kind of guy that could be a 25 carry per game person and flourish, but he's never really been that throughout his NFL career. And Alvin Kamara has been the perfect complement to him, like you said. And he's not just a scat back or a third down specialist. Kamara really showed early in the season when Ingram was serving a 4-game NFL suspension. Kamara showed that he could carry the load and pick up the tough yards inside the tackles as well. So that gives, in my opinion, the Saints as lethal a 1-2 punch at running back as there is in the NFL, because both players can pick up that tough yardage and they can also make plays in the open field.
Yeah, it's amazing, and it's something that every team envies, to have such a good group like that. But also, and I know this from fantasy football, Michael Thomas is an absolute beast. But it seems like they really were trying to get another wide receiver in there, but it never quite worked out. Is that why, like, lately Drew Brees hasn't been doing so well? Is our teams just keying on Michael Thomas?
Yeah, that's a big part of it. And if I had to pinpoint one area of concern going into this playoff run, it is the fact that these other receivers for the Saints have not really stepped up consistently. They do have some talent there. Keith Kirkwood is an undrafted free agent, and the team really likes him. They picked up Traquan Smith in the 3rd round, and he has shown some game-breaking potential. But neither player has been able to string it together consistently. Ben Watson at tight end, he's a consummate professional, but his 15th year in the league, he can't do it on a week-in, week-out basis. And like you said, as good as Thomas is, and even Kamara in the passing game, teams are really bracketing and clogging up those intermediate lanes where these two players flourish. So that kind of handcuffs Breeze and getting rid of the ball quickly. So the last few games he's had to hold on to the ball a little bit more. And the Saints offensive line has been a little bit banged up. So we're seeing Breeze get pressured more in the last month than he had the entire season leading up to that. I'll be interested to see. The Saints passing game has always been a lot better at home than on the road. Now that they're coming back home after 3 straight road games this week, I'd be interested to see if they're going to take some deep shots against that Steelers secondary early in the game.
Yeah, they do. They do seem to do better at home. Another thing about the Saints is their defense is pretty good too. A lot of sacks. How are they able to get so many sacks?
They've built a really, really talented defensive line. Cam Jordan is one of the better all-around defensive ends in the National Football League. He's an excellent run defender. which is he's always been underrated for, but he is an outstanding pass rusher as well. He can beat you either athletically around the edge with speed, or he can bull rush you or stunt you inside and get on that quarterback quickly. And the Saints moved up in this past spring's first round to select Marcus Davenport with the 14th overall pick as a complement to Jordan on the other side. And Davenport missed a few games at midseason with a foot injury, but he's starting to round back into shape. And I'll tell you what, that guy is an athletic freak. He is going to be a monster in this league. You watch. But not only just on the outside, Sheldon Rankins is having a monstrous year at defensive tackle. He is exactly what this team envisioned when they picked him in the first round in 2016. He's played the run pretty well, but he has been a real disruptive force on the inside. Getting to the quarterback, he already has a career high 8 sacks. And a lot of our opinions that cover the team, he was probably the biggest Pro Bowl snub coming off of that roster. But what that's allowed the Saints to do, since they're able to pressure the quarterback without having to blitz, that's allowed them to fortify some of that coverage on the back end that they were struggling with early in the season. And they're actually built similarly to what the Steelers' defense is. Pittsburgh's defense, as you well know, can heavily pressure the passer. And if they are able to get to that quarterback and even rush him, you don't even have to sack him, but even rush him and get him off of his spot, just like the Saints have been able to do, that really affects the passing game and how well they're able to produce.
It is kind of similar to the Steelers. Good line, maybe not the greatest secondary, and not getting too many turnovers either.
Excuse me. Yeah, right. The Steelers defense just has 7 interceptions on the year, but the Saints defense is only a little bit better. They've had a total of 12 interceptions. Now, over the last 8 games, I think they've forced at least 14 or 15 turnovers in the last 8 games. So they're starting to hit their stride. We noticed a big turnaround in the Saints secondary when they made a trade with the New York Giants to obtain Eli Apple, the cornerback, first-round pick of a couple years ago. And he has been a terrific complement to last year's Defensive Rookie of the Year, the cornerback Marshawn Lattimore. The two of them are able to hold up in man coverage, and that allows the safeties on the back end, Marcus Williams and Von Bell, that allows them to freelance a little bit. And as long as they're making good decisions and communicating well, which was a problem early in the season, they have of late been able to eliminate big plays over the top, and they're starting to make plays in the passing game.
Yeah, it's amazing. Eli Apple was an absolute disaster with the Giants, and it's just a classic change of scenery situation. Just need to get out of that situation, and you can do well.
Yeah, and he really has. And a lot of us were excited when the team did trade for Apple, because Apple was a standout performer at Ohio State, and there are so many Ohio State players on that Saints roster, especially on the defensive side. And Apple and Lattimore were actually teammates. Apple, Lattimore, and Von Bell were actually teammates together at Ohio State. So you have a known commodity. That secondary came together really quick once he arrived in town.
Yeah. So how do you think this is going to play out? Do you think this is going to be a shootout or a low-scoring game? Who do you think is going to win?
Well, I tell you what, watching both teams early in the preseason and early in the regular season, and I said to a lot of people, I'm like, when these two teams face off, it might be a 45-44 game. But in recent weeks, I'm really impressed with the way both defenses have been playing. I think it's going to be a tough task for Pittsburgh to go in, even though they're riding a high confidence wave after beating New England last week. Their nemesis for so many years, as you know. But it's going to be a really tough task for Pittsburgh to come in and beat New Orleans in that dome. I don't think it's going to be a shootout in the 40s or even the high 30s, though. Roethlisberger and Breed, they have so many offensive weapons, and they're both still so good at this stage of their career. They're going to make plays. But I can see the game being played somewhere in the high 20s or low 30s. If I had to pick a score right now, I'd probably go with the Saints somewhere in the range of winning the game 31-28. But I could see both defenses making some plays during the course of the game too.
Yeah, I think the game being in New Orleans is going to be a big factor. So, yeah, it would not surprise me if the Saints won. But the Steelers are desperate, so you never know.
Yeah, and Mike Tomlin teams have always played well in December